coaching for speakers and presenters.
Sure.
As a speaker, and I assume you also coach, I'm sure you see speakers constantly. What's the one trait or habit or good habit that you believe separates good speakers from exceptional speakers?
To me, an exceptional speaker is one who is authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is truly trying to be themselves instead of trying to be the next Tony Robbins or the next Zig Ziglar. They are trying to be the next them. And I make my living coaching. That is my primary source of income. And I work with emerging speakers to help them discover their message and then develop and deliver. But as I said earlier, it's all about discovering that message first, but being able to deliver it from a place of authenticity,
right,
so that the messages we hear in the real world, often they're all the same.
Yes.
But what makes them different is the person up there delivering them. So unless you find yourself, you'll just be a carbon copy of somebody else.
Okay. And conversely, as a coach, what do you find to be the most persistently bad habit that people have trouble being trained out of?
The worst habit I find with emerging speakers and speakers in general is they won't give themselves permission to speak.
Allowing themselves to speak.
They don't think that they're good enough yet. They don't quite have it yet. And they always put an obstacle in front of themselves that prevents them from going where they can already go based on what they've already achieved.
At Toastmasters, with new people, we tell people they first come in trying to force themselves to speak, and it's about allowing themselves to speak.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. Rich, let's talk about the coaching experience. Many people have never used a coach. Can you tell the Toastmasters audience, what should they expect from a coach in terms of what should they expect in the experience, and what should they expect or require of a coach when they hire one?
It's the second part of that I think is important, because there are all sorts of different types of coaches, and coaches will give you different amounts of their time. Some people will only give you one email a month, and they'll edit your speech, or they'll talk to you for a half an hour and give you a half an hour of their information regardless of whether it is you need it or not. So when you are trying to find a coach, you need to be very exacting with what your requirements are and ask those questions of who it is you're looking at coaching you to find out if they're going to meet your needs. With the coaching that I do, I try to meet every speaker where they're at, because sometimes it's somebody who's brand new, sometimes it's someone who's very experienced but needs to polish up their message, and then everybody in between. So I have to find out exactly what they need and the best methods to coach them. Sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's over Skype, sometimes it's mostly over email, and then the amount of time we spend helps determine the investment that they're going to make in themselves.
Right.
Snap Magazine would like to ask a question.
All right, we have someone from Snap Magazine with a question. Denise.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this. Sorry.
That's okay. You're in. Go.
We kind of touched on this earlier when I was taking some shots of you beforehand, and I asked you about who you think some of the great speakers are, and you kind of shared a couple with me and said where you find yourself in the middle. I thought that was a great insight to how you do your public speaking, or how you view a speaker should be. So, kind of want to share that with the crowd.
Sure. Well, what I was telling her earlier was that some of my idols in speaking are the big ones, the Zig Ziglars and the Brian Tracys of the world, but I can't be them. I can try to emulate what it is that they do. Zig Ziglar, of course, the great storyteller. Brian Tracy, wonderful with his logic and reason, and being able to be a terrific trainer. But I can't be Brian or Zig. I have to find a way to use what skills I've learned by watching them and use me to channel it out.
Great. I wanted to ask you about the World Championship of Public Speaking. I was there, and I was working as Sergeant at Arms in the room, and I got to see your speech and loved it. I remember that it was talking about your kids and talking about what we knew then, switching the old saying, if I knew now what I knew then, it was kind of the other way around. And how did being in the World Championship of Public Speaking, and I'm sure you wanted to win, you love competing, how was the experience of being in the World Championship, and how was the experience of not winning, and how did that affect you?
But we all want to win. You typically don't compete unless you have some vision of winning the ultimate trophy at some point, even if for you that ultimate trophy is just winning at your basic club level. Getting to the World Championship for the first time in 2006 was an amazing experience, and I felt like I'd finally done what I wanted to do. The year before, I had competed at the semifinal and I'd gone over time. So in 2006, it was all about redemption, proving to my district that I wouldn't let them down this time and that I could make it all the way. And I did. Taking third, yeah, there was a little bit of disappointment, but at the same time, I still brought home a trophy. And as my coach says, you trophy, that's good enough, you trophy. In 2008, I didn't trophy, and I was a lot more stressed out. If anybody's seen the movie Speak, kind of saw a bit of my experience that year. It was very different from 2006, because I suddenly thought, well, I took third in 2006, so this is the year I'm going to win it. Mm-hmm. You can ask a lot of other people who've gone a few times, and that's kind of how they saw it too, most likely. I didn't approach it with the sense of fun that I should have, the sense of really enjoying the moment. And that whole experience in 2008, and the documentary that they did called Speak about that particular championship, getting a chance to see myself, really changed the way I approached the contests and Toastmasters in general from that point forward.
Well, I thought it was a brilliant movie in terms of revealing, and you were an open book, open heart surgery in that movie. We saw what Rich Hopkins was about in that period. Maybe not what you are today, but what you were about going through that process.
Well, I was all about winning. I mean, if somebody comes up to you and says, we're going to make a movie about what you're doing, and you're in a competition, what's the first thing you think? Mm-hmm. Well, they're going to make a movie about me winning the World Championship of Public Speaking. It's perfect. So I was absolutely an open book. You never quite stop and think about the consequences if you don't win.
Well, what are your thoughts on competition now? After going through success, setting a high bar, having that, what are your thoughts on competing in the future?
I just went through competition in my own district here for the fall, which of course those contests don't go forward. My goal was really just to enjoy myself, to find different trophies along the way. So whether I won or not, at the end of it, I would still be able to see how I was doing. And so I set benchmarks for myself in terms of how I controlled my nervousness, which I had a lot more nerves than I expected even after all this time. How I would be able to construct in the evaluation contest those evaluations that weren't the way I coached people, weren't the way I do evaluations in the club, but met the requirements for that contest, because it's very different. And in the Tall Tales contest, it was really all about sharing one of my very favorite stories, and I didn't care if I won or not. And ironically, I ended up winning a district, maybe because I stopped caring whether I won or not.
Or maybe it's because you're one of the best speakers in the world. We'll leave that up to the judges on the day.